Somewhere in the course of an ordinary week, a thought arrives that does not feel like a visitor. It feels like a conclusion. It has the texture of something arrived at rather than something received. Not a passing mood, but a deep grievance, a long political conviction, or a heavy sense of fatalism. We operate on a very specific assumption about our inner lives. We believe that if a thought is running through our consciousness, we either built it ourselves or we consciously chose to learn it. These particular thoughts do not feel like visitors. They feel like conclusions. They arrive with the texture of something we have reached through experience, carrying the full weight of a finalized position on how the world works. There is no internal warning label attached to them. Because the thought is running through our mind, and because it aligns with our worldview, we automatically assume it belongs to us. But consider the mechanics of a different possibility. What if that deeply held, native-feeling conviction was not built by you at all? What if it was welded together decades ago by someone who is now dead? This diagram illustrates what that means in practice. Watch as this rigid wireframe separates from a faded silhouette and embeds itself directly into a bright, active node. That node is a living nervous system. It is physically running a foreign structure in the present moment. In this framework, a living body is simply a vessel. It is a host, and it blindly runs whatever is inside it, entertaining both the thoughts it creates locally and the rigid structures that arrive from the outside. This brings us to a specific difficulty, which we can call the invisible seam. From the inside of a vessel, an inherited pattern and a locally created thought feel completely identical. The vessel reports what it is doing, and the reporting does not distinguish between the two. Hosting creates a baseline uncertainty where a person can no longer distinguish between a thought they built and a structure they merely inherited. To see how this happens, we have to map out the mechanics of the mind. Here is a diagram showing scattered, unconnected particles drifting randomly within a boundary. These represent loose contents, the vast majority of your everyday thoughts. A fragment of a song, a casual opinion you overheard on a train. Notice how they drift without ever connecting to form a larger shape. Loose contents are entirely harmless. They are simply entertained by the host, and on their own they do not do much. But watch as this dense geometric form breaches the circle. This is a configuration. It is a foreign pattern that enters the mind already holding a rigid, highly specific shape. The distinction is critical. A vessel merely holds loose contents, entertaining them as they pass, but a configuration actively organizes the vessel it enters. If these patterns are out there drifting through the culture, how does a specific configuration end up locking into one vessel while entirely skipping the person sitting right next to them? The first thing to understand is that patterns possess no consciousness. There is no one inside them. They do not plot, they do not select victims, and they do not have agency. The mechanism at work is resonance. A pattern only locks into a vessel that already contains the early, partial rudiments of its exact shape. A configuration of deep political grievance, for example, finds a host who already carries a baseline disposition for feeling wronged. The matching process requires no invitation. The vessel simply provides a partial frame, and the pattern provides the configuration that completes it. Psychological inheritance is a structural accident. It is born entirely from shapes automatically snapping into matching shapes. So why exactly does an ancient dead pattern feel so intensely personal and native once it gets inside you? Watch this geometry at work. As soon as the configuration enters, it acts as an architect. It magnetically pulls the drifting loose contents and snaps them violently into designated empty slots on its own frame. It uses your most recent, highly personal memories, a slight at work, a romantic disappointment, as raw building materials. It sorts and weights your experiences, massively expanding its own scale while perfectly maintaining its original, foreign shape. This creates the ultimate illusion. The thought feels like your own because it is constructed entirely out of your personal memories, but the blueprint that assembled them was drawn by a stranger. Since the internal boundary is invisible, how can a person detect a configuration currently operating inside them? The configuration leaves specific textures. The first is incongruity. This occurs when a deeply held conviction radically clashes with the rest of your personality, sitting uncomfortably inside a life it never quite fit. The second texture is stability under challenge. A configured belief ignores logical argument. Instead of yielding to new evidence, it blindly recruits that new material to justify and protect its own architecture. The third is disproportion. This is a grievance or an emotional reaction that carries vastly more weight than the actual trigger warrants. The matter that should have faded, but simply kept mattering. While these signs aren't definitive proof of a foreign pattern, they map the exact coordinates where one is most likely hiding. If you do recognize you are hosting a foreign pattern, there is an immediate trap waiting for you. You will likely feel shame, distress, or panic upon noticing it. The danger is that the configuration will simply recruit that new emotional distress as fresh raw material. It feeds on the drama of being noticed to maintain its grip on the vessel. The quietest, most effective solution is a discipline of provenance. This means merely recognizing where a thought arrived from, rather than actively battling against what it is. Look at this architectural render, a heavy, immovable pillar standing isolated in the center of an empty room. Recognizing a pattern's provenance does not kill the thought. It simply alters its standing. The configuration stops being the floor you stand on and becomes an object in the room. Stripping a pattern of its native disguise doesn't remove it, it merely relocates it. That shift is the practical limit of what this recognition provides.